The Las Vegas Raiders have just signed quarterback Desmond Ritter, and I'm really excited about this move. Bringing in another quarterback shows that the Raiders are serious about this season. They're not giving up. Instead, they're focused on winning games and improving as a team. We'll dive into Desmond Ritter's potential and also talk about Max Crosby later. Despite some rumors about Crosby possibly being traded, he has made it clear that he's committed to the Raiders and isn't looking to leave, even with talk about teams like the Detroit Lions or Houston Texans. Now, let's focus on Desmond Ritter, who the Raiders picked up from the Arizona Cardinals practice squad. I think this is a smart choice for the team. While I don't expect Ritter to become a superstar quarterback right away, he does bring some hope and potential that the Raiders need right now. If you asked me earlier who I would prefer as a quarterback between Desmond Ritter and Gardner Minshew, I would have definitely chosen Minshew because of his experience and decision-making skills. But when it comes to upside, the unknown potential, Desmond Ritter stands out. Ritter was a third-round pick, not just a late-round selection. The Atlanta Falcons' former head coach Arthur Smith chose him with the idea that he could lead the offense in the future. In his second year, Ritter had some challenges, including being benched, but he still managed to throw 12 touchdowns and win 6 games. What excites me about Desmond Ritter is that he represents a fresh opportunity. Unlike the current Raiders quarterbacks who haven't shown much explosiveness, Ritter has that unknown factor. He might just surprise us, and that's something to look forward to. Even Gardner Minshew, the current starting quarterback, can create plays with his legs. We all know that, unless someone is ignoring the facts. However, Minshew isn't the fastest guy out there. He won't outrun defensive ends or linebackers. On the other hand, Desmond Ritter is incredibly fast. He has legit 4.4 speed. His explosiveness could bring a new dynamic to the Raiders' offense. Imagine the possibilities with Luke Getsy running read options and run pass options, giving Ritter the chance to run the ball himself. This adds so many exciting elements to the game. Ritter is not just athletic, he also has a powerful arm capable of making deep throws. While he does sometimes miss open players, his potential is undeniable. Right now, the Raiders have Gardner Minshew as their starter, along with young undrafted free agent Carter Bradley. Bradley has shown promise in preseason, but we all know that preseason games are different from the regular season. I'd much rather see Desmond Ritter play because he has real NFL experience. He has faced various defenses and has learned how to read coverages. We've seen players like Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield bounce back after being written off. They've both found success in the league, and while I'm not saying Ritter will follow the same path, it's exciting to think about the possibilities. The Raiders are clearly looking ahead, trying to find a quarterback who can succeed. Ritter might not start right away. He needs to learn the playbook and get comfortable with Getsy's system. Luckily, Arthur Smith's offense with the Falcons shares many similarities with Getsy's, so Ritter won't be starting from scratch. Watching Ritter's preseason tape with the Cardinals, I see a lot of upside. He can make reads and isn't afraid to take risks by pushing the ball downfield. While that can lead to turnovers, it's also how players learn and improve. The Raiders don't need to win 15 games this season. They just need to be consistent and win a few. If they can string together a couple of victories, they might find themselves in playoff contention. While I'm not saying that's guaranteed, it's a realistic goal. There's also a chance the Raiders might not find a new quarterback this offseason, but the current quarterback class looks promising. Some people I've spoken to believe that the upcoming quarterback class might not be very strong. Many of the potential draft picks are juniors, and it seems likely that over half of them will choose to return to school for another year. The only quarterback who might declare for the draft is Shedeur Sanders, who is expected to be a first-round pick. Another name to watch is Cam Ward, who some believe could be even better than Sanders. However, there are doubts about whether Sanders will actually be a first-round pick. Given this situation, the Raiders might not find a quarterback in this draft class. It could mean waiting another year before they can select a new quarterback. I know that might not be what some fans want to hear, but it's important to consider the bigger picture. If the Raiders are committed to moving forward with Antonio Pierce as head coach, they need to think carefully about whether to draft a quarterback whose future is uncertain, especially if they have to reach for one unless they secure a top pick. At this point, it's too early to predict how the draft will unfold. The Raiders need to be realistic. While Desmond Ritter has shown some inconsistencies, it's hard to say if any new draft pick will be better than their
unnecessary
current
pressure on him. But I mean,
like
that's the type of guy that we've seen, you know, on different on the other side of
winning games and figuring out the best path forward. Speaking of the team's direction, Max Crosby recently shared some interesting thoughts. But before we dive into that, let's talk about another important move. The Raiders signed wide receiver Terrence Marshall. This is a significant addition that deserves more attention. Since trading away Davante Adams, the Raiders have seen a shift in player roles. In NFL terms, players are typically categorized as X, Y, or Z receivers, along with tight ends. A team usually has a true number 1 receiver and a solid number 2. However, the role of a number 2 receiver isn't always just about being the second best player. It's more complex than that. When we look at players like Trey Tucker and Brandon Cooks, it's clear they aren't true number 2 wide receivers. They excel as slot receivers, using their speed to run deep routes, but they aren't the type of players who consistently beat coverage. They're useful for a couple of deep throws, but they won't be the ones to make big plays regularly. The Raiders previously had Davante Adams as their number 1 receiver and Jacoby Myers as the number 2. While I believe Myers has the versatility to be either a number 1 or a number 2, our wide receiver situation has struggled lately, especially with Myers currently injured. If he returns this week against the Chiefs, it will definitely improve our offense. However, we still lack a solid number 2 receiver. Trey Tucker hasn't proven himself as a number 2 option over the last couple of weeks. That's where Terrence Marshall comes in. He has the potential to fill that role. Earlier in the offseason, the Raiders considered Michael Gallup, who could have been a reliable number 2, but ultimately retired. It's crucial for the Raiders to find a player who can handle press coverage and beat defenders consistently. That said, Trey Tucker has his strengths. His speed can keep defenses on their toes, and he can be effective in motion. However, if we ask him to run routes where he won't touch the ball, we might not be utilizing him effectively. Most receivers run routes without ever getting the ball, so it's important to use Tucker's speed wisely. As for Terrence Marshall, he's not a superstar receiver, but he's shown promise. In his second year, he recorded 490 yards on 28 catches, which is solid. The Raiders need players who can fulfill specific roles, and Marshall can help with that. He won't be the primary option. That role belongs to Brock Bowers for now. When Jacoby Myers returns, he'll likely take the number 2 spot, but Marshall can help run certain route concepts effectively. I'm excited about the Raiders' efforts to add players and improve the team. While Terrence Marshall may not be a game changer, he can play a useful role alongside Desmond Ritter. Now, let's shift gears and talk about Max Crosby. Recently, he addressed rumors about being traded. He expressed his commitment to the team, saying, "I'm not trying to leave. I know it's a business, but I want to be here." His loyalty is refreshing, and it's clear he's focused on helping the Raiders succeed. Max Crosby has made it clear he wants to be a Raider. He said, "I want to be here. I want to be silver and black." His passion for the team is evident, and he's not shy about expressing it. Unlike some players, like Davante Adams, who seemed less sincere, Max is genuine. If he were unhappy, he would let everyone know right away. He wouldn't keep it a secret for weeks. Crosby loves the Las Vegas Raiders, the organization, and its history. He aspires to be one of the all-time greats, and he's on track to achieve that. He's committed to changing the team's culture and driving them toward success. Recently, there were rumors about Max potentially being traded, especially after the Davante Adams trade and the team's struggles. He even reposted an Instagram story that mentioned coming back home, which sparked speculation. However, it's important to note that he's a fan of the Detroit Lions, leading some to think he might fit there. But I believe that doesn't make sense for either party. Max is young and has plenty of time to help the Raiders improve. Next year, the Raiders could be in a different position with new leadership and possibly a new quarterback. They might draft someone like Shedeur Sanders or Jalen Milroe, which could set the team up for success. The Raiders are not far from being a competitive team. Unlike the Carolina Panthers, who lack talent, the Raiders have standout players, including 2 All-Pros on defense. While the Panthers struggle to have recognizable players, the Raiders have talent, including promising young players like Malcolm Koonce, Robert Spillane, and Trayvon Merrick. The key issue for the Raiders has been the lack of a strong offensive coordinator and a clear leader at the quarterback position. If the Raiders can address these needs, they could quickly turn things around from a 2-5 record to a 5-2 record. I believe Desmond Ritter can help the Raiders win some games, even if they don't make the playoffs. Winning a few games can show progress and build momentum for the future. If the upcoming quarterback class doesn't offer a strong option, they might stick with Ritter or Aiden O'Connell next year. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, consider subscribing, and I'll see you next time with another update.